Inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Special jazakallah to Iman for making herself available. And like we said, it's not only going to be about Quran, Hadith. Everything that we do will be related even to the professional fraternity. Like today, we've got Iman, who's a registered dietitian. She's done her studies at the University of Pretoria, qualified BSc Food Science, B Dietetics at the University of Pretoria, and she's got the Masters of Therapeutic Nutrition at Stellenbosch University. Alhamdulillah, this is enough proof to show that our community daughters, our sisters, and our mothers can progress, unlike the past where our parents said our daughters can't move forward. So as usual, before we continue giving the speaker the opportunity to continue, Maulana's advice always is to start off something either with the Quran or Hadith. So it is your session. I'm just going to be reading a brief Hadith out from Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam based on the topic, the importance of a balanced diet prescribed in Quran and Hadith. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stated in one of his hadiths, no human being has ever filled the container worse than his own stomach. The son of Adam needs no more than a few morsels of food to keep up his strength. Doing so, he should consider that a third of his stomach is for food, a third for drink, and a third for breathing. This is Sahih Hadith. It comes from Sunan Ibn Majah, Hadith number 99 from Book 29, Volume 4. Without further ado, I'm handing over to Iman. Inshallah, Iman, the floor is yours. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Continuing from exactly what you've just said, is that we've reached a point in our in life or in our lifestyle where what happens now is we've gone onto a trend of gluttony. You know, it's become the norm, especially during Ramadan, to have multiple courses and fancy courses on our table. So we have you know, like a pre-starter, then we have our starter, then our second main course, and then we have desserts, and obviously again after Tarawih treats. So it's a very good reminder that we started off with that hadith, because it is very important for us to remember that nourishing our body and nourishing our soul is one of the, you know, it's actually key, and it's important because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us our bodies as an amana, and we're meant to look after it. And more science is now showing what we already knew years and years ago, which is that most diseases or all sickness starts within the gut, so from the stomach. So there is a very good quote that I always like to mention, and it says, when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. But when diet is correct, or when diet is right, then medicine is of no need. And this is actually very powerful, because it basically says to us that we can, by changing our lifestyle and nutritional habits, we can actually, you know, prevent a lot of illnesses or control many of our illnesses as well. And I think the best time for us to start this is actually during the month of Ramadan, because it's a good time to inculcate new habits as a family in your home. And for starters, the biggest one being is that we should try and focus on, you know, nourishing your body and nourishing your soul during Ramadan. So the best way to do this in Ramadan is, remember that you've got to give your body just as much as what it needs, not to overdo it, because if you overdo it, then you become too tired to perform your prayers, and then you basically just do the bare minimum because you're overfull. You might feel bloated. You might feel tired with the prayers as well. So it makes your life a little bit more difficult in that sense. So always keep in your mind, not even in the back of your mind, really in the front of your mind, that 1/3 food, 1/3 water, and 1/3 air. And I think a nice way for us to do this is if we think about a little bit more of practical practical ways to do this. So if we think about good options for our sehri, if you are a person that does not like big meals, so your meals tend to be smaller, or you find it difficult to eat at that time of the morning, then we know that it's still sunnah to partake in your suhoor, and even a date and water can keep you going for the day. And that's because dates is actually very high in carbohydrates and simultaneously high in protein as well. So remember that as you eat your food, and when your food is more balanced, and adding sunnah foods to your meal also helps to, what we know, or translated back into a more modern way, is it lowers the GI of the meal, increasing the fiber content and keeping you fuller for longer. So back to the point of smaller eaters, a glass of water and a couple of dates, that does well. If we think about some smoothies, so if you are a smoothie person, there are many, many options. You can make a smoothie with almost anything that you have in your house. Your basis is you need a liquid for it. So you can have your milk or you could have water as your basis. You can add your fruit inside. So if you have bananas and dates, you make a banana and date smoothie. I see we have some nice figs popping up here and there in the country at the moment. It just depends on the batch that you actually come across. You can make a fig and date smoothie. That's also using your sunnah foods. And you can make strawberry smoothies. People add yogurt to their smoothies. And all of this balances your meal because including your carbohydrates or your energy foods from your fruits. And then your protein in the form of your milk, and your fruits also contain some protein. And then obviously your fats, which is usually found in your liquids. And when you eat a balanced diet, we know that from the balanced diet, it keeps your body nourished throughout the day. And you don't want to reach a point of slump, because I think many of us, what happens is during the days of Ramadan, we reach a point in the late afternoon where we sort of, your blood sugar has spiked during the day, and now you're actually dropping your blood sugar. And this is the time where you're supposed to have enough energy, because the time between Asr and Maghrib is essential to make your du'as at that time. So that also, it will bring me to the second half of a thing where I address specifically the mothers and the sisters. And also, well, actually the men in the house too, because it's sometimes often that the men are the ones that, I don't want to say demand the 7-course meals. And this sort of puts the ladies in the house in the kitchen at the most inappropriate time, because they should also be making dua at this time. Yes, serving your family and cooking for your family and feeding the fasting person is an act of ibadah. That is true. But it would also be nice if the mothers and sisters focus less about the fanciness of the meal, because I know a lot of things have to be Instagram worthy or worthy of being posted and showing off your pictures online of what you've cooked. But instead of taking the focus away from, making something quick and simple and easy, instead of making, like I say, the gourmet dishes. There's nothing wrong with making gourmet dishes. That's don't get me wrong in that. If that is your passion and that's what you love to do, and that's what makes you and your family happy, by all means, you can go ahead and do that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But just try to be time-wise in that sense. Other good options for your sehri, I know lots of people love to do this one, is oats. Oats is also very low GI. It's good for our diabetics. I know besides the pandemic that we have of COVID, we have another pandemic, which is diabetes. That is literally, like I would say, encompassing our communities faster and faster. And it's worse than what COVID has done, because obviously this is more on a long term. Interestingly enough, COVID has also brought on a surge in diabetes as well, because of the inflammation that COVID has caused. So we've also got to start focusing on keeping the GI of your meals good. So if your GI is low, it means that your food has enough fiber inside. It keeps you fuller for longer. So oats is a good option, but to balance that oats, you should always add a protein in the form of a boiled egg, or you can put a teaspoon of peanut butter in there. It's nice to add some nuts and seeds to your oats, just a little bit of a sprinkle into your food. And those are good options for your sehri or your suhoor to keep you going throughout the day. Also, remember, it's essential to drink a lot of water during the day, especially if your days are very hot. I know we've had some very hot days. And our Ramadan, the beginning of Ramadan, might also just go into, these fairly hot days. And if we get dehydrated, it makes you feel unwell, and then you struggle. So if you fall behind with your sort of fluid intake from the start of Ramadan, you really struggle towards the end, where you feel the fatigue and you feel the exhaustion. And I mean, we don't want that, because we reach a point, we have to make it with exceptional energy to the last 10 days of Ramadan, inshallah. Then the big, so usually what I find, obviously with my patients and from personal experience, is that actually sehri or suhoor is not our problem. Our big issue comes to iftar time, because I think we have lost the essence of what a meal actually is, because out of Ramadan, we don't actually eat like that. So if you think about it, during Ramadan, we tend to eat a lot more. And that's why, many people would say, especially, if you have non-Muslim friends, in your workplace and your colleagues that you meet along, and when you explain to them what happens in Ramadan, where you don't eat from dawn until dusk, and then they will say, oh, but that's an excellent strategy to lose weight. And actually, it's supposed to be a good strategy to lose weight and supposed to be a good starting point if you're on a weight loss journey or a journey to better health. But what happens then is that we tend to overeat during iftar time, and we eat very energy dense foods, which we make up in that span of an hour or 2 hours that we eat in the evening. We actually eat what we're supposed to be eating for a day and a half. So we overdo it. So if your average is 2,000 calories for a day, and you eat these very energy dense meals in the form of your milkshakes and your savories, and then your desserts and your after Tarawih treats, also all of that combined together can reach even up to 3,000 calories. So remember, the more calories you bank, the less weight loss you have and the more weight you actually gain during the month of Ramadan. So we should then shift to better habits in the evening. And I think a good idea or a good practice what to do is when it is time to break your fast, to start off with your dates and your water, especially if you have the privilege of keeping Zamzam water in your house. Remember, Zamzam is shifa or the cure for everything except for death. So we can start off with our your dates and your Zamzam. And if you are very hungry, because sometimes you might feel that you are exceptionally hungry at that point, and it's also nice, you can have something else like cucumber and yogurt. You could have, you know, how we do the bagels with the dukkha and the yogurt, something cooling as well, and then take a break. In that break, it's important that it's important to have that break so that your mind and your body can now register that we actually started feeding it. And this also helps your, you know, the mechanism for where your stomach basically tells your brain that I've got food now. I'm no longer in the starving state and I don't want to eat everything that's in sight. So what happens is then you get up, you go make your salah, then you come back to the table, and then if you are hungry, you eat thereafter. So what it also works nicely during the month of Ramadan is, I know it's the time of the year where everybody looks forward to having their savories, and that's you know, it's more cultural practice than anything else, is that Ramadan is our time for our mini steak buns and your mini steak pizzas and your samosas and your pies and your spring rolls, whatever it is. There's no it's not that you shouldn't be having it, but remember, the key is moderation. So a good practice is then to alternate your days. Remember that your savories is not a starter. It actually counts as a full meal. So what happens then, for example, let's say on day 1 of Ramadan, you have your savories and your soup or your halim or your lentil soup, whatever it is that you have in your home. And that's it. That is your meal for the day. Then on day 2, instead of having savories and soup on the table, you have your meal instead. And then you alternate your days in that way. When it comes to treats and sweet options, I know that it's also like, you know, it's a must that we should have milkshakes on our table, and, you know, all the faluda and the firni and the custards and jellies and these fancy desserts during Ramadan. I feel like that's it's almost become every day, but these are still treats. And remember that your treat should be saved for special days. So once a week, even during Ramadan, even out of Ramadan, you can treat yourself weekly instead of having something like that on a daily basis. Then, you know, this gives you enough energy, and in this way, you are filling up your stomach just a little bit to take away the hunger pangs. And you obviously, then you've got your water, which you have at iftar time. It's important to drink a lot of water then. And then you leave that 1/3 air. And that 1/3 air is important so that you can actually stand and perform your Tarawih prayers, because that 20 rakats of Tarawih, it's actually a form of exercise. So if you don't have the energy and you've overeaten, you don't have the energy to do that exercise for that evening, which is not only a physical exercise, but a spiritual exercise. And, you know, each day that you miss a Tarawih, you don't get it back, because Ramadan just, you know, exactly what we said in the beginning, everything's just going in a blink of an eye and things are just passing us by super quickly. So it's important that we actually gain the maximum benefit out of this month. Another good option, like for after Tarawih, I know many people after Tarawih usually feel a bit hungry, which is normal because you've done some form of physical activity in that sense. And we come home and we usually want to have tea and biscuits, or we then eat a second plate of food, or we nibble on the leftover savories. So all of this then, once again, you know, causes an instability in our blood sugar. So it takes your blood sugar up, and then you sort of have a dip in the middle of the night, and then you wake up at sehri time super hungry and you grab all the carbohydrates because that's what your body is actually craving at that point. And so then the circle of unhealthy eating continues. So good options for your after Tarawih treat or after Tarawih doesn't have to be a treat or a little meal or a light meal, would be something like a banana with half a glass of milk. You can have some fruit. You can have a handful of nuts. If you are very hungry, have some cheese on like your whole wheat crackers. Those are all good options for the evening. And I think it's important for us to remember, or to take guidance and ideas. And if you're unsure, it's always, we have a lot of access to our fingertips, and you could always WhatsApp somebody and be like, can you give me a good idea for what's your healthy snacking, if you know that somebody's doing something better. We generally share our unhealthy options or dessert ideas that way quickly over the WhatsApp, but it's also nice to ask your friends, your family, for healthy snacks. So the groups that go around of these amazing menus during the month of Ramadan and afterwards and throughout the year, I've never seen a group that says or healthy eating or healthy meal options. Okay, and then what's also important to remember during Ramadan, I think, is we'll bring in another hadith there. I think Uncle Samir sent it to me earlier, so I'm going to read it out to you guys. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that eat and drink but avoid excess. So we go back to this point. So it's multiple times where this is mentioned in your Quran and in the hadith or the sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we should only eat enough to fill ourselves up, that 1/3, and leave the space. And I think that during this Ramadan, or this should be the time where new habits are inculcated, because science and studies have showed that it takes 14 days to kick a bad habit. Some studies have showed that it takes 21 days to kick a bad habit and to form a new one. So we should definitely try and make a conscious effort, not waiting for the first of Ramadan. We should actually start from today and prepare yourself. We have to prepare for something. We always prepare for big events in our life, and Ramadan is a big event. So I think it's important that we prepare in advance in that sense. I think I don't have anyone. I just want to leave a little bit of time for a few questions if anyone has. If you don't want to ask it out loud, you are welcome to type it in the little comment section here on the side if there's something specific that you would like me to address or speak about. So I'll just leave a few minutes open for that. I don't know if Uncle Samir also wants me to address something else to speak about. I kept this very more relaxed. I didn't want to write a speech and talk. I wanted it to be, how we said it's a family virtual class, and something that we, relax, like we'd be talking about over the supper table. So that's why I kept it a little bit more, not very formal.
Ramla, I think on my side, you've covered basically, I would say, is for us as laymen, a lot of things that we knew, but we needed to be reminded. And I think from a professional perspective, we've obviously tried to highlight it and remind us again what we need to look out for and what we don't need to look out for. From my side, I don't have any questions. Marv, I got cut off in between as well just now, about a minute ago. I had to restart. So I don't know if anybody else, Nazir, Waida, Muhammad Zairuddin, anybody else, Zakir, if you guys got any questions or want Iman to touch on something, please feel free, let them know.
The other thing is, if you don't want to address your questions here and you'd like to, address it privately, that's also welcome. You can, I think, ask Uncle Samir for my details, and then we can, I can address questions in that way, especially if it's something more disease specific. That's also, those kind of questions are always welcome.
Yeah, Iman, if you find, I can put your email address on this chat box in the meantime.
No problem. Perfect.
If anybody wants to, like I said, send something later on, they can do so, inshallah. While we're waiting maybe for somebody to send a question or something, I'd just like to add that I believe Iman is also involved in community work. So it's not only about doing work for being professional on our own side, but it's giving time towards the community as well. So there's also community services from Iman's side. And I think that's a good example for all of us to learn that no matter what profession you get into, you must never forget your community services. That's actually sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. although we're calling it community services in today's time and it. So alhamdulillah, Allah Pak protect you and make you continue that way, inshallah. Khair. Okay, I guess looks like a lot of the people today have been preparing for Ramadan desserts and savories. We had also a big problem with load shedding in it, so some of the participants are not here. Some of the Cape Town guys are out of time. So there is nothing. Iman, from on behalf of our families and every participant that's here today, we'd like to say Jazakallah to you. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. May Allah reward you. And inshallah, we're looking forward for the next round, maybe after Ramadan sometime, inshallah. And hopefully that will be a face-to-face class, inshallah.
Inshallah.